Good morning and welcome to CSI's January Tech Talk. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the January quick hits, which if you haven't joined us before, are a collection of mini topics on things I think will be of interest to you. So let's get going. There's a lot of material. One thing we've noticed of late is more and more email filtering, spam filtering devices has been blocking our Paladin remote monitoring notifications and our emails. So if you haven't done it, please just make a note to waitlist csiny.com so mail flows properly to you. In terms of our Paladin monitoring clients, please make sure that the on-site manager, which does the monitoring in your buildings, is on the unfiltered internet list so we don't have communication problems. This is a little bit dated in the sense that it's less than 76 days now to when Windows XP is discontinued. It's going to be unsupported. There's going to be no security updates. There's going to be no patches. Microsoft will not pick up the phone if you call and ask them what to do. If you still have XP in production, you need to make a plan for April 8th, 2014. The same is true with Exchange 2003. It's unsupported. It's end of life on April 8th, 2014 as well. Most of our clients don't have that much XP left, and if you're in the financial services industry or anything to do with medical, anything to do with confidential client information, personal information, banking information, financial information, you really can't have XP in your environment after April 8th of this year. In terms of the seriousness of this, the antivirus vendors are basically coming out and they're publicly stating that they can do nothing to prevent the operating system exploits that probably are going to happen. You know, if you look in the past, you'll see that there's always some sort of issue that they issue a security update for, and Microsoft's not going to do that anymore. And the antivirus vendors are saying, well, hey, we're antivirus vendors. We're going to do a great job at what we're doing for antivirus and anti-malware protection. But if something gets into the operating system because there's a hole in the operating system, all hell is going to break loose. And don't blame us when you blow up. Microsoft also has announced Microsoft Security Essentials for Windows XP will be no longer available, though they have announced that they're going to continue signature updates for that until July 14th, 2015, which is the Windows Server 2003 end of life. So what happens if you have to run XP in production mode after April 8th? Web reputation content filtering is probably your best friend. And what that is in your, despite the antivirus vendor's comments, in your high-end antivirus, anti-malware suite offering, they have these things called content filtering or web reputation. You can also buy it as a separate offering too from vendors. And the basic gist of that is that if whatever the bad thing trying to exploit the hole in your operating system is blocked from launching the attack on you, well then the fact that your operating system is vulnerable isn't that relevant in the sense that you won't get the infection to start and cause the chaos. That you need to have on every single machine, not just XP, but every single machine. Even if you say, well, we don't want to block Facebook, and we don't want to block shopping, and we don't want to block porn or whatever else, you do want to block the bad sites that are trying to do you harm. So the concept of web reputation and content filtering is increasing in importance, even if you think you don't want to control where your people go on the internet. However, if something gets by, and we know it's going to happen, there may be little chance of stopping it in XP, and bad things would be afoot. What else should we be doing? Well, all XP machines should have the Windows firewall turned on. I know a lot of people don't like to turn it on because it's extra work and figuring out ports and the like, but we have to put up as many barriers as possible that if something bad breaks out in our network, that we're going to be safe, and that's really what this is about. XP machines should have their users as limited users in their machines. Um, so a lot of people will say, oh, I'm going to just make them local administrators so that I don't have to configure security on the local endpoint. Well, if something can get a foothold on the machine, it can attack you from the inside. So we really want as few rights as humanly necessary for those users. And I already mentioned the security essentials, not that it's the greatest thing. Antivirus vendors are saying even though Microsoft has discontinued XP, they're going to keep supporting it for quite some time. All the major names are saying that more or less, so that's going on. Java continues to be a challenge and one of the major attack points in terms of getting into our networks and being able to potentially do bad things to us. The latest update as of the other day was Java 7, Update 51. It does change the security prompt behavior for unsigned Java apps. Realize that most bad things are probably unsigned Java apps. Also, there was a report of a Kerberos lockout issue. I think that was with Java 45. But this may cause you pain to upgrade to be safe, as all Java things tend to cause you pain. As you can see on the list, Adobe's got an update, Flash has an update, iTunes has an update, Firefox has an update. More Office 2013 updates. They didn't blow up my machines when I did them like some of the other ones have. The DRAC issue, if you have a Dell server, the remote access card, and it's not just Dell servers, Cisco UCS servers, HP ILO cards. Basically, Bob had found this article where the government is warning that since those kind of are backdoors into the management interfaces on our servers, that those that wish to do us harm are taking a shot at attacking those remote access interfaces to get access to our information, our servers. So I gave you that link to look at. Internet Explorer, if you remember last time I talked about Internet Explorer coming on, how to block it, and the like. What I've done is I have immersed myself and most of the Office in Internet Explorer 11 to experience the experience. And basically, my general findings in doing this, and I'm running it actually with you right now to do this WebEx, is that Internet Explorer 11 is pretty normal. It's fast. It's much better than IE 10. If you have IE 10, upgrade to IE 11 today, probably. It seems very stable. It seems much more stable than IE 9 has been, and IE has been for quite some time. I don't find myself blowing up nearly as much with IE. It does pretty well with most sites. Compatibility mode fixes most sites that are broken, and that's right off the menu there. And also remember, if you have specific sites that are broken by IE 11, we can set compatibility mode programmatically via group policy. So we can set a central list of these guys got to run in compatibility mode and not leave it to our users to set that. There were some reports of issues with Java in IE 11 early on. Some people had called us and reached out to us on that. My general recommendation on IE 11 is test and deploy as you feel comfortable. If you have IE 10 already, this is much, much better, and just upgrade, because whatever pain you have, this will be better. Now here's an interesting dilemma. Internet Explorer compatibility mode has fixed things for ages. And it really came out when we went from IE 7, which was kind of the gold standard, to IE 8 and 9 by making the browser compatible with IE 7. However, more and more vendors are kind of taken this position that they're only going to support 2 versions of Microsoft software back in time. So with Internet 11 coming out so quickly on the back of Internet Explorer 10, what we have is Internet Explorer 7, which is compatibility mode, is more than 2 versions back. And so we've seen issues where sites have all of a sudden broken in compatibility mode because Microsoft, the site is saying, well, we're not going to support more than 2 browsers back for Microsoft. So it's kind of weird because you're in IE 11 and you go to a website and it says upgrade to a current browser, and you're at the most current browser, but it's compatibility mode. So sometimes you may be having to reach back into compatibility mode and pull it out. Unfortunately, we don't have an IE 9 compatibility mode, which is probably what we need these days. This is really, really bizarre. You go with Internet Explorer 9, 10, 11, and you go to a self-signed SSL certificate, and we're all used to seeing these screens. But notice there's no continue. Normally there's a warning, and it says, I know the risks, let me keep going here, and you know it's self-signed, and you know it's you, and you don't care. But here I am in IE 9, and I went to a self-signed SSL that I'd been to in the past, and now there isn't a continue. The variation on this is there's a continue, but when you click on it, it doesn't continue. Basically, in following this down, this has to do with self-signed certificates being old and the level of encryption being considered out of date. Now they want SSL to be 2048 bits, and older stuff was 512 or 1024 or what have you. Basically, if you see this in IE, there is no recourse. You cannot import the certificate. You cannot trust the site. You cannot get past this. The only thing you can do is fire up Chrome or Firefox, which basically doesn't care that the certificate is basically considered fundamentally insecure these days, and will give you the traditional, you understand the risk, click and move forward. Really, really weird. So an IE update had to do that because it didn't used to do that. Windows 8.1. Evan's been using it since it came out. He says the pseudo start menu is a big improvement versus trying to figure out where to hover. It's getting more normal. Industry Trade Press says Windows 8 now is about 10% of install base. A lot of rumors of another major upgrade to Windows 8.1 in March, and a lot of rumors that maybe Windows 9 next year will be what we wanted Windows 8 to be, much like Windows 7 fixed Vista, and what we wanted that to be. So it sounds like they're going in the right direction. In our travels, there are many folks now starting to experiment with the Windows 8 Touch tablets. Last time I spoke a lot about HIPAA, and we had a bunch of really excellent side conversations after that from that conversation. I'm going to go through a little information now following on that discussion. Google will sign a HIPAA Business Associate Agreement, and if you're under HIPAA, that's a big deal to you. And so there's the link as to their commentary that they will sign it. Microsoft Office 365 will also go that way, but Prayer said when he went down to the big exchange meeting in New York City with Microsoft that you have to ask in advance is what they said. Now, for our K-12 clients, there's this other parallel universe alphabet regulation called FERPA. And FERPA is basically kind of like HIPAA for K-12 public schools. And there's definitely an intersection of opposing laws between HIPAA and FERPA. School districts are covered under FERPA in most cases, public school districts. However, I read in one section that for school district not to be covered under HIPAA, the district has to declare those PHI, EPHI, electronic personal health information records, quote, educational records. So if the school district has done that, my understanding is that makes you FERPA eligible, and the FERPA standards would thus supersede the HIPAA standards. Now, that's the question we got last time, was the question about, well, the lunch system has the information that Johnny has a peanut allergy. So the lunch lady at the checkout, when Johnny puts in his code to buy lunch, will see that Johnny has a peanut allergy so that bad things won't happen. Well, that's kind of electronic personal health information. And so this FERPA distinction that it's an educational record makes it so you're not subject to the fierce penalties of the 2013 HIPAA revisions that the rest of the world dealing with EPHI is subject to. New York State Ed says in their Medicaid handbook that FERPA standards are more restrictive than HIPAA. So everything I said last time about what you needed to do for HIPAA is true for FERPA. If FERPA is more restrictive than HIPAA, then all the stuff I talked about with, who has access to the nurses' share folders, etc., is true. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Don't play one on TV, and this is not legal advice. So you should talk to your own counsel on these things because that's not who I am. But here's what I think I have come to understand in HIPAA versus FERPA. All right? The exception to FERPA for public education appears to be if a school district has a private contractor for medical services. So I'm guessing like a private physician or private nurses that aren't on the district payroll who do medical billing for services rendered. I'm wondering, like my daughter does crew, and so she had to go for the school physical to do crew, and the doctor was a doctor from Health Quest. So if the district was paying him to come and do these sports physicals, that seems to still be under the HIPAA rules and not the FERPA rules, at least for that transaction. And again, that's why God created lawyers to know these things. Also, private and parochial schools that do not receive funding from the U.S. Department of Education are not FERPA eligible. They would be HIPAA eligible. HIPAA has the big financial penalties. FERPA seems to limit the school district's exposure. Now, so that you can read this awesome stuff and figure it out on your own, I have linked you to the exact New York State Education Medicaid handbook that talks about HIPAA and FERPA and the page. So you can read that and share that with your own folks and come to your own conclusion. So bottom line is FERPA is more restrictive than HIPAA. Everything I said last time, which is also posted if you guys didn't see it, the October Tech Talk, which is also posted. You can listen to me talk about that. Apologize, I did misspell HIPAA in the last presentation. I put 2 P's and 1 A. My bad. So anyway, you can look at that. On FERPA, Google Apps for Education is FERPA compliant. There's the link. You can go read about it. Also, Microsoft Office 365 is FERPA compliant, providing you ask in advance. All right. Google. Google's strategy, it appears, to try to take over the world from Facebook incrementally is to put this Google Plus account on every single thing you do. And I know, as I have set up Google accounts to do various things, to have email flow and from devices and the like, that I just am growing these G Plus accounts. right? And what they're trying to do is say that everything you're doing in Google's world intersects with Google Plus. Therefore, you're hanging out in Google Plus. Maybe you won't want to go to Facebook quite as much. Now, what I do is I give you a link as to how to hide some of these random Google Plus accounts that you generate. Also, as people have gone into Google Apps, as opposed to having an on-prem group-wide server or Exchange server or what have you, one of the issues that's really come up is the issue of an SMTP forwarder. All right, because even though we lost our on-premise mail server for a cloud-based mail server, we still have Xerox copiers and Canon copiers that are scanning to email. We have SANs that need to report, virtual appliances that need to report, all sorts of things that need to email information to the appropriate people that need to know these things. So the question becomes, what do you do if you've gotten rid of the mail server, which was your forwarder? And Google Apps has a built-in SMTP forwarder. And what you can do is you can go into the admin settings and you can turn it on. And the beauty of turning it on is the fact that one of the things Google's always made you do is do the weird ports and stuff for configuration and authentication and all that to make sure you're not a spammer. A lot of very simplistic devices can't comprehend what Google needs to do normal email configuration. When you turn on the Google Apps forwarder, you put in your address range for where you're coming from your Google Apps domain, and it essentially dumbs it down, and it gives you a forwarder that uses all those default settings without authentication, and it just works wonderfully. How much, though, you're allowed to send is dependent on the size of your Google accounts domain, and how fast is also dependent. And if you go up and read about it, they'll tell you their formula. So then you have to look and say, well, based on how big I am, is that enough flow to cover my internal SMTP forwarder needs? All sorts of folks are doing Chromebooks and playing around. I have an article there referencing how to set up Google Cloud Print if you do not have a Cloud Print enabled printer. Back to my 2 versions back commentary, Google Apps doesn't support IE9 anymore. It comes up and says, this is an incompatible browser. Your experience may stink. Here's a button for Chrome. Wouldn't you like to have a browser that supports this? It does work. It's kind of annoying with the message, but works fine in IE11, as I said. There's a link there on how to remove yourself from Google Street View if you find something that you do not want to show in Google. They have a process of doing it. The next thing is kind of interesting. Google Voice is pretty cool in terms of intersecting phone numbers that follow you with text and read your email, read your voicemail into text, so you can just read it, and it's very neat. But they kind of just seem to be handing out numbers, and so if you give up your number, they're just going to give it to someone else, and whatever's flowing to it is going to flow to someone else. And there've been some issues with like 13-year-old girls getting a Google Voice number and weird stuff coming to them. Interesting discussion about cloud-based student privacy issues. Google Apps says we're not going to do ads, but it's very quick to, the article points out, to you're clicking on things that don't have those privacy restrictions in the Google world. A thing that's excited a bunch of people is YouTube. Google YouTube now offers free streaming of events, live streaming for sites with under 100 subscribed users. It can be turned on and off under the account setting, and it's being rolled out gradually. So now if you have a event and you want to live stream it on YouTube, you can do that as soon as you see that button underneath accounts to check. And I think that's just coming out of the Google Hangout stuff out of G+ again. The other thing I did is back to the G+, is I had all these G Pluses, as I said, and I wanted to change my primary email. Google Takeout has a methodology where you can migrate your Google Plus connections to a different Google Plus account. And it takes about a week to do, and they say you can't really make much changes in the week while they're in transition, but it also reaches back to all the Google Plus folks and that are in your circles, and it automatically changes them to your new thing. The other thing that's kind of going on in the office, and just to be aware of, is since they so integrated with Google Plus, you get into the concept of that I have my Facebook like chat stuff going on, and we've seen people make up goofy names. It's their personal stuff, and they make up a name. And the thing that Google stresses is, well, gee, if you connect with Google Plus, then your contacts will be automatically updated for whatever changes they make. And so we've seen legitimate business contacts all of a sudden have their names flipped to really weird, goofy names, because the people don't realize that the stuff they're doing in Google Plus is bleeding back into their professional environment for the attached Google Plus name, and it's flipping all the contact books, etc. So just keep that in mind as we go forward, that they're integrating that. So if you're playing around with that, whatever you type in Google Plus for your name or whatever is going to find its way back into your professional world. Moment on Google Apps share permissions. Google Apps, Google Drive has share permissions, but they only exist in the world of Google. If you send a file from your Google Drive inside of your Google Apps domain, the share permissions will be enforced. If you send it outside of your Google Apps domain, the share permissions will be enforced only to another Gmail or Google Apps domain. I had a case where I had a document. I created a handout for somebody, and I had a document, and what I wanted to do was explain what this client needed to do. So I had it on my G drive, and I attached it to an email, sent it to Donna. Donna forwarded the email to the client. The client just has a personal Gmail account. The client couldn't open my document attachment, and Google computer generated a message back saying that so-and-so requested to open my document and that I needed to grant him permission to open my document. And that's what's going on there. Now, if you send that same document to somebody not in Google land, either your Google Apps, another Google Apps, or Gmail, but to Opt Online or Yahoo or some other non-Google based email, there is no share permissions. They only exist in Google, and that same attachment has no restrictions at all. Also, if I take that G Drive file and I save it to my desktop and then reattach it to the email and then send it inside Google World or not, there will be no permissions restriction. So the download and reattach breaks the Google Apps share permissions, in other words. Google Apps and Outlook. Painful, I guess is the way to say this. We've pretty much given up on Outlook because of the kludginess and the pain of using this. There's still a couple stragglers in the office, but make sure if you're using Google Apps for Outlook, sync icon in the sys tray, right-click on it and tell it to allow an unlimited PST file so you can actually full sync. Absolutely, you have to make sure that you completely sync one time. There's no such thing as public folders in Google Apps. contacts in Outlook or whatever is in your My Contacts list in Google Apps. Uncheck the calendars you don't want to sync, and make sure your antivirus excludes the local Google Apps PSD file. So there's some tips to try to make it run better. And the other thing is, if you're using Outlook for Google Apps, keep it alive up as much as possible, because if you don't, that resyncing is really, really painful on most machines. This is a problem that's been nagging us for the beginning of time, it seems, with networks, and that's the Microsoft Office read-only issue. If you have erratic Microsoft Office read-only issues, what a first gold standard is prevent client-side antivirus from scanning network shares. The number one reason for read-only issues where you open a file that should be read-write and it isn't read-write is client-side AVs scanning issues from network shares. So go into your clients and uncheck scan network drives. Let the servers scan the servers. Let the clients scan the clients. Most times just doing that, life gets better. Secondly, make sure you're patched to the latest versions of Microsoft Office. Remember, those patches come from Microsoft Update, not Windows Update. And finally, I talked about this like a year ago with Excel, but it's kind of come back again. If you go online, there's just tons of people who are saying, you know, Microsoft, why won't you help me? This comes and goes. It's so painful. Please help me. And no help seems to come other than the suggestions that were made. But many people have said they've had success with this third bullet. And what that means is that the Windows Explorer preview pane, conceptually you click on a folder, say a home directory or a share folder, and the Windows Explorer preview pane attempts to display a preview, thumbnails, or otherwise visually what's there. What Microsoft is basically suggesting is sometimes Microsoft Office can get confused by that Windows Explorer preview pane attempt to visually display the contents, and therefore it thinks somebody's already in the file, and therefore you get this erratic, mysterious read-only message. And that's, they say, what's going on. Then if you say didn't open your home directory and stare at the files to click on it, but opened Word and said file open and just clicked on the document where preview wasn't in play, then maybe you don't get the read-only issue. Or say it's a share folder and you don't have it open displaying the preview, but somebody else in the building has it open and is doing it. So then you get it even though you didn't have it open. So they're saying that this may be behind a lot of it, and there's a number of people saying, aha, this is the secret. The secret is there's a group policy called Turn Off Windows Explorer Preview Pane. It does just what it says. If you research this, at some point Microsoft, I think with Windows 8, changed it from Windows Explorer Preview Pane to File Explorer Preview Pane. But most of the documentation you're going to find online is going to say Windows Explorer Preview Pane. If you cannot find Windows Explorer Preview Pane in GPMC, then look for File Explorer, and you will find it. All right? And turn that off, and then people say magic happens. Now, but there's still people that say, I did all this, and I'm still messed up. But a lot of people say this works, and if you need help with that, let us know. Exchange 2013 seems like it's pretty normal. They've kind of worked out the stuff they needed to work out. Basically, they finally support network share PST files with newer SMB protocols, but they still don't like it, and that's always been dogging them. Microsoft has finally fixed, I read just the other day, since this was written, they have finally fixed the SVC host 100% CPU in Microsoft Update. And since it's fixed, I won't go into the story as to what happened. But if you update your XP machine to current levels. The most recent update set will fix the 100% CPU Microsoft update issue, and that is pretty huge if you're on XP. Here's another thing, and this is one of these, why does Microsoft do this sort of stuff? Basically, roaming profiles for Windows 8 and 8.1 and Server 2012 and 2012 R2. You may recall we've talked about at length previously that Windows XP roaming profiles and Windows 7 roaming profiles are incompatible, and Microsoft did something pretty intelligent since they are incompatible, and they auto-magically figure out that if you're on XP, your roaming profile path is whack server name, whack share name, profile share name, whack squimby. And if you're on Windows 7, whack server name, whack profile share name, whack squimby.v2. And they just automatically figure it out and keep you from being corrupted. But then they point out the warning that Windows 8 and Server 2012 was incompatible with Windows 7 profiles, and you might corrupt yourself mingling it because they didn't follow their own logic of, if it was going to be incompatible, one would think you'd have a .v3, .v4, and just keep going to keep everybody safe and alive. They didn't do that. They basically just left it where you could mess yourself up if you were going roaming profiles between Windows 7 and Windows 8 or 2008 R2 and 2012. So now they've figured out that they should have done what they should have done to begin with, and they've issued these patches, which I list here, which basically continues that .v2, .v3, and so on logic to keep everything safe and secure. All right, and it works from Windows 8 on up, but at the bottom there's a note that you have to go on the servers where the roaming profiles are going to go and do a one-time registry hit and reboot so that the servers are aware of these new extensions. So there's a client-side update, and then there's a server-side update, but they finally fixed it, which is really cool. Windows 8.1 SkyDrive, domain join accounts, there's some issues, has to do with profile redirection, GPOs block SkyDrive. There's now a GPO to turn off SkyDrive syncing if you don't want people sending your data to the cloud around you. Little PowerShell script that shows you what the logon credentials are for the services. Nice series to learn PowerShell if you want to learn PowerShell. Windows 8.1, here's the link for the latest ADMX files for 8.1 and Server 2012 R2. Remember, they get copied into the central policy store. If we've worked with you, you have a central policy store. The ADMX files go into the policy definitions folder, and the ADML files go into the en-us folder underneath the policy definitions folder. The next one's pretty cool. Basically, Windows 8.1 GPPE, they changed drive mapping and quota behavior, and basically they now dynamically update in the background without logging off. All right, so what that basically means is I can map a drive letter to you via GPPE on the fly, and it will just magically show up. Now, remove or replace commands in GPPE will still force a disconnect and close any open files. But now we don't have to. Normally we'd say log out, log back in. Do you see your drive? Now we can just say, oh, you need drive M to here. Bam, here's drive M. So that's pretty cool. There's no Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer MBSA 2.3 that supports the new OSs. There's the link. KMS again. We always talk about KMS, it seems. Remember, out-of-grace workstations or out-of-grace Microsoft Office copies don't count against activation levels. You have to rearm and then reboot and reactivate. I've talked about that in previous presentations at length. Remember, never use a KMS key on anything but a KMS server, and you really should only have one KMS server. right? The whole point of KMS is to not have to deal with this stuff once you get through the pain of startup. Mac keys are for non-KMS situations and KMS problem machines. If you have a machine that should register KMS and you're spending 10, 15, 20 minutes on it, there's no point to it. Just put a Mac key on it and walk away. It's just not worth the effort. OEM preloads use the keys on the labels on the bottom of the machine, and they don't use KMS or Mac. They use whatever's on the bottom of the machine. Remember, OEM is hardware dependent, so therefore you can't switch outside of the specific model it came on if you make your golden master image. That's why we do KMS. There is a patch for KMS to support Windows 8.1 and Server 2012 R2 for KMS activation request. Simple patch requires a reboot of the KMS server. Here's an interesting problem we had a client have, and I talked to him. He was in one of these presentations, and I have an update to this. Basically, the scenario is they have Windows 8 tablets. They enforce a password change policy based on number of days. Password change policy comes up. The user changes the password. They reboot the machine. The machine melts down. The solution is to break and rejoin the domain. A whole lot of people are talking about this. The suggestion is that it has to do with KB 2883201. All right? And in talking since I wrote this slide, the answer is it is related to KB 2883201. The only problem is what they told me is if a machine never gets this patch, it will never fail. If a machine gets this patch and they back the patch out of the machine, then it will still fail on a password reset. And what the client said is that this patch is baked into Windows 8.1. So I told them, and they were afraid to upgrade to Windows 8.1 because of this issue, because it's pretty devastating to them. And so what I told them is, well, take a machine 8.1, do this, and see if 8.1 fixes whatever the issue is or not. I haven't heard back yet on that, and I'll report once I know that. Windows 8 VPN issues. Evan's reporting that he's had a number of cases where with Cisco AnyConnect, he's needed to manually import the certificate, SSL certificate for the VPN installation to work properly. Sites and services. This is a big deal. We harp on this a lot. Make sure all VLANs that are valid VLANs for Active Directory authentication are in your Active Directory sites and services subnets assigned to the appropriate sites. This includes wired, wireless servers, domain controllers. All right? And then once you have all your subnets defined against the sites, then periodically check the netlog.log file list there at the very bottom and look for clients that are connecting to Active Directory that aren't coming from an approved VLAN. And what you have to then do is understand why that is. Is that because you forgot a VLAN, somebody created a new VLAN that's a legitimate VLAN and it's not on the list? Well, then put it on the list. Is it that somebody mispatched in the closet and you have some workstations on management VLANs that should not be servicing production users? Then you got to go track it down and fix it. But adjust accordingly and then periodically check that netlog.log file. Paladin, our Paladin monitoring, does pronounce when netlog.log in your world is offended by foreign VLANs. So those alerts are on the console. Microsoft Outlook connectivity. Microsoft has two very good guided troubleshooting walkthrough, whether on-prem Exchange or Office 365 Exchange. WSIS update. There's really some chafing going on between WSIS and Windows Server 2012 updates, even with the patch, which I list here. The solution is to implement SCCM patching instead of WSIS, or have a 2012 server go to Microsoft updates directly if you're falling into this hole. Microsoft, on a side note, is getting very, very ornery about Windows Server 2003 support in VMware. So they're starting to give us a hard time when we call up about 2003 running in newer VMware. Windows 7 Anytime upgrade is dead. The only way to go from a consumer version of Windows 7 to enterprise version of something is to buy Windows 8.1. The Control-Alt-Delete and RDP is Control-Alt-End. That'll do it in the RDP session and not your local session. We all do that all the time. A little note on disabling safe mode and for like a kiosk. Now the machine will blow up, but nobody can do anything. So if you care, you can read that. Yet another Microsoft licensing document to hurt your brain. This is a big deal. Production user accounts, meaning the real people that sit at the real desk to do the real normal worker bee work, should not be in any of these protected user groups. And I list what they are there. If you put your people in these groups, bad things happen, especially in Exchange relating to email and mobile device management provisioning. Bad things happen in Active Directory permissions, group policies. You do something, you think you have it right, and then you go away and it goes, the thing that you, quote, fixed disappears, and you don't understand why it's so unreliable. The reason is that protected group accounts are reset by Active Directory in 30-minute intervals to protect the people in the group from changes which violate the inherent rights of the group. And that's what's going on. There's this invisible hand coming down and slapping you when you try to do something to control people in these protected groups beyond whatever they're allowed to do. The really bad thing, too, is when you realize that you did that and you remove the people from the protected groups, what happens is the 30-minute clock continues because the variable in Active Directory, SD-prop, is not reset. We know how to fix this. What we have to do is 2 steps. First step is get everybody who's a production user out of these protected groups. They have no business being here. Treat the master IDs like you treat the master key. You go get it, you use it, you put it back, right? It shouldn't be your production account. Secondly, once you have everybody out, you can contact us and we can run scripts to document who has this problem, and then what we can do is we can write a script to flip the variable so that it's back to normal, and then we can monitor it to prove that it survives the 30-minute window and that it no longer resets itself. This is a big deal. It happens a lot. And interesting hack. Online purchasing account was hacked. Purchases made. What the hacker did is they signed the person up for like 160 legitimate listservs. So their email was completely and totally flooded to attempt to hide by sheer volume the 2 purchase confirmations that were in this person's email. Kind of a different deal here. Crypto Locker update. I talked about this last time, and I know some of you guys reached out to me and said, yes, Scott, I want what you talked about. And that's in the October presentation if you didn't hear that. And I didn't give it to you. And here's why. Because the percent updated, percent software restriction, it works well. It may work too well in some cases. And I've lived under it for quite some time since October to experience the experience. And basically, believe it or not, there's quite a number of legitimate programs that use percent app data, percent for exes, LogMeIn, Dropbox. So I don't know that if we just turn this on willy-nilly for all students or all teachers or everyone, that you won't have meltdowns of programs that won't install or won't initialize, won't work. I can tell you that having lived under this on my machine as administrator, I'm pretty much out of business being administrator because you can't install anything, you can't do anything. With that in mind, my advice to you is it's extremely powerful. It works really, really well. It may work too well. So what you need to do if you want this is you need to deploy it in a limited environment and see what breaks. And then we can put exceptions in to say, don't do this except for Dropbox. Don't do this except for LogMeIn or whatever we want to do. But then we'll put the exceptions in, roll it out to those people, the next group of people you're going to do a test again, be very, very conservative, limit it to roll it out. If you want to do that with those restrictions, let me know and we'll do it. I have the policy. This is interesting. It's a Microsoft hotfix, and it says for a blue screen, but VMware is saying VMware is saying that they have a condition that I have seen where you clone a virtual machine with a VMXNet 3 adapter, and the adapter disappears, and you're left with the perfect, provisioned new machine, and it's just not there. And this is the hot fix for it from Microsoft that VMware recommends. And like I said, I have seen this. This is strange. I cannot type, if I use the iPad client for view, I can't type an @ sign in the vSphere client for a password. I can type it in an email. I can type it in it just won't, any password that has an @ symbol will not work. I don't know why, because I can certainly type that any other thing. It's just a very, very strange anomaly. There are a bunch of reports of RDP issues not working correctly to Windows VMs. Microsoft had a bad RDP patch. They pulled the patch. Life was better. I should tell you, we talk about Patch Tuesday, and I'm starting to read, there have been so many bad Microsoft patches, and you read the Microsoft support community, and what they're doing is they talk about Patch Tuesday, and then they talk about Dead Body Wednesday, and with Dead Body Wednesday being, what died when you applied the patches from Patch Tuesday. So people are hanging out waiting for somebody to go first, and then on Dead Body Wednesday, they kind of look at what carnage is or isn't happened and then decide when they're going to do that. So that's a new term, Dead Body Wednesday, to me. This is something stupid that just, you get into this and it's just very frustrating. You go to connect to a UPS, APC UPS, to do something, and it tells you you can't connect to it because another user's logged in. But another user isn't logged in because they just aren't. But it says they are, and so what do? And so I'm sitting there, well, maybe I can telnet in, and maybe I can do this and that. It's simpler than that. Just go back to your UPS address /logout.html5, and it logs out the phantom connection that isn't logged in, and you do what you want in 10 seconds. All right? Paladin update. We got a bunch of things going on that we've done since last time for our remote monitoring customers, clients. We've improved replication DFS monitoring. We've improved critical device monitoring relating to sporadic patterns to kind of catch things that aren't necessarily happening back-to-back but happening over time. Looking at NTFRS database corruption, Dell switches weren't self-healing. I did a bunch of things relating to improved blue screen of death monitoring, possible power issues on Windows meltdowns, improved Exchange 2010 monitoring both on performance issues and mailbox moves, application blocking events like the app data stuff I just talked about, vastly improved VMware alerting, improved Exchange 2007 back pressure alerting. I am about to, at any time now, do a major upgrade in the month of February, and there's going to be a bunch of new things coming online, which are pretty exciting, but we will not talk about them here. I think all of our direct accounts, we've dealt with this already. Equalogic bias alert. The 606 firmware bias on the Equalogic SANs is quite bad. It can cause volume corruption. We have seen this. The fix is 607. If you are 606 and you're not one of ours, then we did not contact you, and therefore you are at extreme risk, and you should immediately, not tomorrow, fix this, or reach out to us to fix this, because you could blow up at any moment in your virtual environment, and it is gruesome. We have had this happen. You do not want this to happen to you. Multi-factor authentication is where a user requires not only an ID and password, but also a extra code, an extra sign-on something to access their account. This is something you really got to get involved with. This is kind of the next security thing. As we go more and more to cloud-based resources, as we go more and more to anytime, any place-based resources, what we need to do is that an ID and password is not good enough. All right? This multi-factor, this third stream, so to speak, how does it come through? It could come through as a phone call. It could come through as a text message. It could come through as an email. It could come through as via an external device like a smartphone or a USB stick. And the point is, I say I'm Johnny Jones and my password is Sunshine, and then I have to type in 0096521, which is the code that was generated or given to me via the text message or the phone call or the email or the smartphone or whatever for that one unique transaction, my very next transaction. If you have my ID and password and you do not have the third element, which did not come through the same system that I'm typing the ID and password, then you have nothing, and you can't get to my stuff. Now, it's available on more and more devices and software. Cisco VPNs do it, VMware View do it, Microsoft Small Business Server, Google Apps, Microsoft Outlook web app, Twitter, Dropbox, LogMeIn, Paladin does it, Evernote does it. You need to implement multi-factor authentication across the board to access your sensitive information. It's really becoming not an option. CSI is working on a multi-factor authentication offering. Details to that will probably come shortly before spring. So that was what I had to talk to you about today. I know we went rather quickly. I thank you for participating. You can go find the October Quick Hits is also posted. There's some other things posted up there. Go to our website, www.csiny.com/blog, and you can read my other posts. And you'll also see there when the next Tech Talk is coming. We covered probably 10 other topics besides the Quick Hits today. We feed you good breakfast and lunch, and you can look up there on our website to see the next dates. I think the next date is March 17th, and then there's another one in May. But if you go on the blog, you can get it. So that's all I have today, and I thank you and have a great day.